Hello, my friends. My name is Kip Wehrman. I'm one of the directors of Punla Christian Ministries, if you don't know me. Pastor Azul asked me to share just a few short thoughts on the title topic for the camp. That is the youth experience, and it's based on 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 12, and I'm going to read out of the King James Version. Let no man despise thy youth, but be thou an example of the believers in word, in conversation, in charity, in spirit, in faith, and in purity. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this opportunity to share. Lord, speak through me today so that those listening will get what you want them to hear from these amazing verses in 1 Timothy. And Lord, I know that in this world we face difficulty, and I know there are those listening who have troubles going on in their lives, and I pray to you that they would hear these words from you and be encouraged so that they can have that peace that you've promised them. Your burden is light, Lord, if we only trust in you. So I'm praying that during this camp and in the days and weeks to come, that they will look to you, Lord, and trust you, Lord, more and more. I pray for the pastors. I pray for all those that are assisting with this activity, and I pray for the students, that they would get the most out of this time together, this amazing fellowship that they are given. And Lord, you know that this time of year we're being thankful. We're remembering you because of the sacrifice that you made for us. You came here and became a human like us. So we can't imagine that God would do that for us, but we know how important it was for you to make a way for us, and we're so thankful to you, Lord, for that. And you didn't have to, and we're not worthy, but we thank you for every moment that you have given us and to this amazing relationship that you have invited us into. And Lord, when you came so many years ago in that manger, none of us should ever look at how we came into this life or where we live as being less than others if the ruler of the universe can be born and placed in a manger. Help everyone to remember that and keep that in perspective, especially during this season. I hope everyone had a wonderful Merry Christmas, and I'm looking forward to the amazing new opportunities that you're going to provide for us in this upcoming year. And I pray all these things in your name, Lord Jesus. Amen. Okay. The two letters that Paul wrote to Timothy. Now, I mean Paul, the Apostle Paul. Most scholars believe that the Apostle Paul wrote these letters to a good friend. Timothy was a younger man, but a very much a close relationship with Paul, and you can see that in the letters to Timothy. This is probably one of Paul's closest friends, actually, and he refers to Timothy as a son in the faith. Not just as a reference to his age, but most likely Paul shared the good news of Jesus with Timothy, and Timothy became a believer because of that. And I've been blessed in my life to share my belief in Jesus with others. And when someone comes into a relationship with Jesus because of the moments that we've spent together, God's used you in a way to reach another human, it's special. And those people are always going to be special to you. They are your brothers and sisters in Jesus, and often you refer to them as your sons or your daughters in faith because you have been what God used to facilitate their relationship, and it's just an amazing thing. And I think as we grow as believers together, especially if we have shared together and that has been what brought us into a relationship with Jesus, our bonds grow stronger and stronger over time. And those bonds can be stronger relationships than our real family relationships. In fact, I think there's no doubt that Paul cares deeply for Timothy, and that's one of the main reasons he wrote this letter of 1 Timothy. Now also, Paul either left Timothy in Ephesus or he sent him there sometime after Paul started the church in Ephesus. Now we know about this in the book of Acts, where Luke writes about the journeys of Paul as a missionary and the churches that he started. Now the exact situation and time, we don't know, and people argue about what and when and the conditions that were in Ephesus at the time that Paul is writing this letter. But bottom line is the Christians in Ephesus were not doing very well. Ephesus was a very prosperous city. It was one of the richest cities in the Roman Empire. It was the center of the worship of a pagan goddess named Artemis, or sometimes it's referred to as Diana in our Bibles. There was a lot of money flowing through this city. Many of the people that lived in this city had a lot of money, and there was, well, let's just say that anything could happen in Ephesus. Ephesus was a bigger version of maybe our modern day Las Vegas. It pretty much anything happened. If you think in terms of movies, Ephesus was a city, they would have rated it X-rated because the sex and the drunkenness and the probably drugs and a lot of violence took place in this city. So it was a rough city to be a Christian, especially in the first century. To follow Jesus and be different than everyone you're around brought some troubles their way. And because of that, they were allowing the culture to change their views on Jesus and how to follow Jesus, as a lot like what we suffer with today, where our culture, well, I should say many people in our culture today claim to be Christian, but they allow the culture to kind of creep into their belief, and they excuse things that, frankly, Jesus says we should not excuse. We should not say right is wrong and wrong is right. And unfortunately, that happens a lot, especially in America. So the people in Ephesus were letting their culture get in the way of being a true follower of Jesus. And that's the reason Timothy had either been left there or had been sent there by Paul to try to guide them, because they were drifting away from God, and they were drifting away from God probably pretty fast. Now, Timothy is charged with doing the impossible, and that's helping to get them back on track, even though they don't know they aren't doing right. So he has to actually point out to them what they're doing that the culture says is okay, but is obviously not okay if you're going to be a Christian. And another thing that's obviously going on in this letter is Timothy's young. He is probably in his 20s. And most of the people, it appears, in the church in Ephesus were much older. And as you know, in your culture, and it was the same in the Greek and Roman culture as well as the Hebrew culture of the first century, older people kind of don't like being told that they're wrong. And I think it's the same in our culture today. And I remember struggling with this myself. So I know many of you struggle with this. But when I started my professional career as an engineer, I was almost always the youngest person in the room. I would be leading these meetings. And I was in my early 30s, and most of the people in the room were in their late 50s or 60s. So I struggled with this problem because they looked at me as young and inexperienced and stupid, and they didn't always like what I said, especially if I was telling them they were wrong. Now, I was expected to be the expert. I was expected to be the leader of these meetings. But because of age, I was not always respected. And unfortunately, I didn't act very respectful either. I often would say things in ways that maybe wasn't the best plan. I would be sarcastic, or my facial expressions or body language would show that I was very displeased with what was going on. And unfortunately, I did not show the older people in those meetings the respect that they deserved. And that was my fault. Because of that, I didn't always earn the right to be heard. People viewed what I was saying, how I was saying it, not really the content of what I was saying or the reason I was saying. And I think it's really easy for older people to feel like they're being insulted when they're talked to in a certain way. And now, as a young person, you feel the same way. It's like, why can't I be heard? Why shouldn't I be listened to? And you're right, but you have to earn that right. And I think communication goes much smoother when both sides recognize that each side deserves to be heard, but each side also has to earn the right to be heard. All right? So I think that is really what Paul is trying to address in this part. You know, young people who want older people to respect them need to listen to what Paul says to Timothy in these verses. And, okay, young people, I want to just say it and say it again. You deserve to be heard. You deserve to be listened to. And us older people, we need to remember that we were young once, right? Young people, you can and will have a huge impact on this world. And I am excited to see what you're going to do. But there is a godly way to do this. And then there's an ungodly way to do it. I know the ungodly way because for much of my life, that was the approach I took. And, well, let's just put it this way. My experience has been that God's way is a lot better than my way. And if I had taken God's approach, it would have been much easier for me. I would have been much more successful in those events. So God is inviting us into his bigger and better plan. He knows what's best because he created everything. So it's really good idea for us to listen when God is trying to give us a message like he does in this letter from Paul. Now, Paul is giving Timothy some guidance. That's what this is all about. The entire letter is about this. And it's also important to understand that Timothy would likely have read this letter out loud in the churches in Ephesus and probably throughout the region of Achaia. It probably was not just one church. So the words that Paul is using are meant to show the older people that, well, Timothy should be listened to, especially because Paul has sent him. So we have to realize this is not just a private letter. This was probably a public letter. It had a purpose, and so we need to kind of see what that purpose is. So I want to back up a few verses and start with 1 Timothy about verse 6 through 13. And I'm going to read out of one of the newer English translations called the New Living Translation. If you explain these things to the brothers and sisters, Timothy, you will be a worthy servant of Christ Jesus, one who is nourished by the message of faith and the good teaching you have followed. Do not waste time arguing over godless ideas or old wives' tales. Instead, train yourself to be godly. Physical training is good, but training for godliness is much better, promising benefits in this life and in the life to come. This is a trustworthy saying. Everyone should accept it. This is why we work hard and continue to struggle, for our hope is in a living God who is the Savior of all people and particularly all believers, teaching things and insist that everyone learn them. Don't let anyone think less of you because of your age. Be an example to all the believers in what you say, in the way you live, in your love, your faith, and your purity. Until I get there, focus on reading the scriptures to the church and encouraging the believers and teaching them. Well, I hope that was a little easier to understand. I wish I could read the Tagalog version to you because it's really beautiful. But I think, at least me, I sometimes struggle with some of the words in the King James because despite how beautiful the King James was translated, it's in a version of English that we just don't use in our modern world. So it makes it a little difficult to understand. So I think we need to just take a step back and look at what Paul's intent is. He's telling Timothy to be bold. You know, some people aren't going to like what he's going to say. Don't worry about them. Do what is right according to Jesus and stay focused. It's really an audience of one. We only have to satisfy God. And I want to look at verse 12 in some detail now for just a few minutes. You know, the first word in the King James is despise. Now, don't let them despise you is what Paul says. In other translations, it's don't let them look down on you or think less of you. And I think the think less of you really captures it well. The Greek word can even mean to insult. Don't let people insult you because of your age. Paul says, do not let them think less of you because you are young. And that's exactly right. Young people, what you say matters. It has value. And older people, you should listen to younger people because what they say matters. They deserve to be heard. But, and there's always a but, and in the Bible, when you see these, you better pay attention. Remember, if you want to be heard as a young person, you want to be listened to, then you must be a good example. Someone who is worthy of being heard. Your word, your conversation, your charity, your spirit, your faith, and your purity is what Paul is saying. Now, I don't know about you, but these words are not always what I use in my everyday sentences or conversations. So let's look at the words to see if we can get a better understanding what Paul is recommending to Timothy. What kind of example are we supposed to be showing the world so that we have the right to be heard? The first word is word. It's logo. It's logos, or it's our statements. It's our choice of words. It's how we talk. It's our speech. Words actually matter. How we use words matter. We should choose our words carefully depending on the audience that we're talking to. When you are talking to someone, especially someone older, you need to be careful to use words that they are going to understand. There are a lot of words that we use in the modern world, especially you young people, that older people simply just don't understand. They will misinterpret what you're saying. So yes, you have to select the words based on the audience that you are speaking to. I try to do this when I talk with you in the Philippines, because I know there are certain words in English that Americans say that would confuse you. I mean, a typical one is young people, when I was young, in the 70s and 80s, we had a saying, when you greeted somebody, you say, hey, what's up? And as I traveled around in my career, I realized if you told somebody what's up, they're going to look up in the sky because they are taking what you just said literally. They don't understand the idiom or the metaphor that you're using. I mean, another one that was really common early in the 2000s in America, where people would go around telling you how bad you were, and it actually meant you looked good. And so it can be very, very confusing if we choose words that our audience doesn't understand. I understand that you understand, but if you're wanting to be heard, you have to use words that the person that you're speaking to will understand, or there's going to be miscommunication, misunderstandings. So you can't demand to be heard. Now, I think we also have to talk about that a little bit. You can wish to be heard, but you have to show that you are worthy of being heard by how you behave. And if you're sarcastic or you have bad body language, well, that's not a very good example. And your behavior is probably going to turn people's ears off, or they're not going to listen to you. And that's unfortunate. No matter what you say, no matter how good it might be, they're not going to listen to you if you don't behave properly in a way that they will receive the message. And I think the next word is conversation, and it's a Greek word, and I have trouble saying this word, so I apologize. It's anastrophe, and it's your conduct, it's your behavior. It's it's how we behave. It's our facial expressions. It's our body language. It's the tone of voice we may use. It it matters. In communication, it matters. And if you've listened to any of the modules that I prepared for students when they're doing job search, professional communication is critical when you're looking for a job, when you're on a job, and even when you're in school. Your tone of voice, the words you choose, your facial expressions, your body language is all important. People are looking at you and they're reading these things consciously and subconsciously. And if you are not conveying the message that you're trying to say with your words, with your body and your tone and your facial expressions, you're not going to be heard. You're not going to be listened to. And how you say things is actually just as important as what you're saying. Now, the next is love. I know the King James says charity, but the Greek word is agape, and that's one of the Greek words for love. And in fact, most of the places in the New Testament where love is shown in the English versions, it's actually the Greek word agape. Now, agape is not the love that is hugs and kisses that you feel for your girlfriend or boyfriend or husband or wife. This is this idea of wanting the best for somebody. It's goodwill. You wish and want the very best for someone, even if it means it's not going to be the very best for you. You agape love someone when their best is more important than your situation. And this is how you live life with joy and with peace, is when you can celebrate in other people's successes and you want other people's successes. You show this, again, with the words you choose and the way you speak those words, your body language, your facial expression. Agape love is an honest love. You can't fake it. You have to really believe it and want it for that other individual. And we have to be content with where God has put us. We have to be content with our situation when other people appear to get good things. We have to trust God with those things. It doesn't mean you don't work to get better. But when you wish and want good for others, that's agape. It's not competition anymore. It is this idea that I am going to pray and truly want them to have success and have good things in their life. I'm not worried about me. I can still pray for me, but I pray for them earnestly, not competitively. And in case you have heard me say this before, I apologize before I get started, but there's a story that I really like, and I'm going to get to it in a moment, but I want you to hear what Jesus is telling us. It's not about you. It's about Jesus. It's not about me. It's about Jesus. If we're going to do the things that Jesus is calling us to do, then we must do the good things that God wants for others, not just for ourselves. And in fact, it says in the Bible that we should be focused on good things for others, not just things that benefit ourselves. So we can't just be focused on our situation, what we don't have or what we wish we could have. We have to be focused even more on others and the opportunities that we may have to help others. And this is not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. Caring for others is the best way of life. I can tell you this honestly. I lived much of my life selfishly, but when God finally got a hold of me and showed me the truth, I began to live life in a way that others were more important than myself. And if you're a student in one of our college programs, you're an example of that for me. Our family chooses to invest in you instead of use that money for ourselves. I would love to go on a vacation to a nice beach and relax, but we don't do that, and we don't do it anymore at least, because we choose to use that money for you instead of for our selfish wishes. Now, there's nothing wrong with that vacation, but it's much better to use it for you. And that's what agape love is about. I agape love you by wanting the very best for you, and I'm willing to sacrifice something in my life because you are more valuable. And Jesus tells us we need to love you, and agape you, want goodwill for you. So that's really what Paul is talking about here. Now, the next words in the King James are spirit and faith, and in the Greek, it's really only one word. It's the word piste or pistis, and pistis is, well, it's commonly translated believe, but it's actually more like faith or faithfulness. It's it's more than a spiritual thing. It is this idea that your mind is focused on this, and you live out your faith with your actions. I don't just believe in Jesus. I show that I believe in Jesus because I live my life as a follower of Jesus, doing whatever he's asking us to do or whatever he asks me to do. I am an example to the world through my faithfulness, and that is very important. That's the reason Paul is talking about it here. Now, an example of this is obviously going to church, coming to this camp, fellowshipping with other Christians, studying the Bible, praying, but it's also the way we live. How we live at church is great, but we should live that same way when we're at home, when we're in school, when we're on the job, when we go to the store, when we're on the bus. We live as Christians in every aspect, in every situation of our life, because we love our leader, which is Jesus, our Lord and our Savior. Now, the last word is this concept of purity, and the Greek word is agnia, and I pronounced it poorly. I apologize. But this word is, well, it's really focused on sexual immorality, but in the context that Paul is using, I think it's more than just sex. It's of course, it's talking about don't have sex before marriage, but it's more than that. It's this idea that I'm going to live out my faith as an example to others. There's no doubt that the meaning of this word is specifically talking toward sexual immorality. But I think there's other kinds of immorality that I think Paul is inferring from this word. And remember, Timothy is young, and Paul wants him to demonstrate these traits as an example to the people in Ephesus so that he can earn the right to be heard, and especially heard by the older people in the church. So let me get to that story. I know I probably told this story when I was in the Philippines in October, so if you heard it before, I apologize, but I really love this story and want to share it again because I think it applies to what we're talking about. It's a story about Alexander the Great, and if you don't know who Alexander the Great was, he was the first emperor of the Greek Empire. He nearly conquered the entire known world at the time. His empire reached south into Africa, all the way in Europe, and into Asia as far as India and maybe even China. We are unsure. But it was the largest empire the world had ever seen at the time of Alexander the Great, and when he conquered the Persian Empire. So the story kind of goes like this, and Alexander the Great, that is, could not sleep one night. And he got up and decided that he would check the guard posts, his troops, since he couldn't sleep. And he was walking along, and he came upon a young soldier at one of the guard posts who was asleep. Now, you got to understand that the penalty in the Greek army for falling asleep on duty was very simple. It was just death. Immediate, instant, no trials. It's just, boom, you're dead. So this is the emperor. This is Alexander the Great, and he comes upon this young man, and he kicks him. And the young man is startled. He's still half asleep, and Alexander the Great asks him, "What is your name?" And the young man probably doesn't know what's going on yet. And he answers, Alexander, sir. And Alexander the Great doesn't like it very much. So he asks him again, what is your name, soldier? Now I'm guessing the young man was probably starting to figure out the situation he was in. And he answers, Alexander, my king. And Alexander just gets more angry. He looks at the young soldier and he says, what is your name, soldier? Now, the young man is probably aware of what's going to happen next. And he hangs his head and he says, Alexander, sir. And Alexander the Great looks at him and turns on his heels and says, change your name or change your conduct. And he walks away. Now, I'm sure that young soldier was shocked, and it wasn't the outcome you would have expected, of course. But I want you to understand what the meaning of this story is. Alexander is a name of honor. And if you're going to act like that, you better change your name. That's what Alexander the Great is saying. Alexanders don't do those sort of things. So change your name or change your conduct. Well, Christian is a name of honor. It was first used in Antioch to actually mock the followers of Jesus. But Peter said, no, we really are Christians. Christian means little Christ. As Christians, we are to try to become more and more like Jesus our entire lives. So we are little Christ. We are Christians. But make no mistake, Christian is a name of honor. And to kind of change Alexander's words, Christian, change your name or change your conduct. Christian is a name of honor, and we should act like one if we're going to call ourselves one. And I've meant that to encourage you because Paul is trying to tell Timothy that how he lives and how he acts matters. If he wants to be heard by the older people in Ephesus, if he wants to help them to correct the problems that they're having in Ephesus, he needs to behave properly. He shouldn't call himself Christian if he doesn't. And I think young people, if we want to be taken seriously, and I'll include myself because I'm younger than many of the people that I talk to regularly. I may be in my 50s, but I talk to people in their 80s and 90s. Older people want you to earn the right to be heard. And they have a right to say that. We have to show, we have to act out our example if we want to be heard. We can't demand it. We have to earn it. We have to use words that are easily understandable. We have to speak them in a way that is consistent with the way Jesus would want us to speak them. We have to wish well. Now, wish is the bad word. Want well for others. We agape love them. We honestly want good for others. And then we have to do it with a pure heart. We have to do it with a clean conscience. We're not trying to, the word really is to deceive, but I think it's more that we are not trying to coerce somebody or trick them in any way. We honestly want the best for them. Our motives are for them, not for us. And when we present that example, we're going to be heard. And the older people in our lives will listen to us no matter what our age is. Age does not define whether you have something worthy to be heard. But what you say and how you say it does. So if you want to be heard, then you have to be a good example. follow what Jesus has laid out for us using this amazing letter of Paul, and then you will have the right to be heard. We do this with faithfulness to God. We do it with the honest and purest intentions, and we show it in our actions. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I just love this little portion of 1 Timothy where Paul is laying out so clearly to us that our motivations matter. What and how we do things matter. We have to be focused on you, Lord, and doing things the way you want us to do if we really want to have successes in this life. And I'm not talking about monetary success. I'm talking about good conversations and good relationships. If I want to be heard, then I have to act in a way that is worthy of being heard. And you have given us this amazing, amazing demonstration that we can model our activities after so that we can earn that right to be heard. And you also told us that when people are just going to quarrel and fight with us, we should just not get involved. Now, there's a time to address that, but there's also a time to agree just not to continue. So I think I'm hoping that you will speak through me, Lord, in a way that the listeners can understand the when and the how and the why we do conversation. And we do it in a godly way because we are meant to point to you in everything that we do, what we say, what we do, and how we do it. And I pray all these things in your name, Lord Jesus. Amen. Okay. Let me leave you with this today. If you're a Christian, you need to live like you are. Christian is a name of honor. We honor God and show him that we love him by how we live, how we love others. That's agape love for others. Now, if you don't have a personal relationship with Jesus, today's a good day. You can change that. Life is full of struggles and it's full of pain, but it's sure a lot easier when you have someone to guide you and is there that truly wants the best for you. And Jesus is that person. He's always there. I'm often reminded of a poem called Footprints in the Sand. And if you've never read it, I recommend you find it. And in the poem, the author sees pictures from his life and footprints in the sand. And there's two sets of footprints, his and Jesus. But then he notices that in the worst periods of his life, when he's in pain and under trial, there's only one set of footprints. And he looks to Jesus in despair and says, "Why? Why did you leave me when I was at my worst?" And Jesus just smiles and says, "Child, in those moments, I was carrying you." And I felt that in my life when everything seems to be against you. And when I look back at my life, I can see that God was carrying me because I couldn't have done it on my own. That's a relationship worth having. And if you don't have that, talk to one of the pastors that are there this week and talk to them about what's going on. What are your questions? And I know they will be able to help you to resolve those doubts and point you toward Jesus so that you can experience this amazing relationship. And you're welcome to contact me. You can email me anytime. My email is kip@punla.org. And if you have questions or you would like to hear more of my personal testimony, I would love to share it with you if it will be an encouragement to you, because I have made a lot of bad choices in my life. And thank you to the grace of our Lord, I am forgiven for those bad choices. And what I wish for you, that you don't go through those experiences. It's much better not to have them. But I am a better person with Jesus, I guess is just the only way I can say it. On my own, I was okay, but not good. With Jesus, I'm better than I can be. I can do the right thing even when it's not simple. Oh, it's not easy. It's hard because I'm selfish. God is there and will guide you and help you to make those good choices if you only let him. You have to surrender to him. You have to want that relationship. And it's just an amazing, beautiful thing to experience in your life. And I wish it for every one of you. So I hope you have a really good camp. And I hope that you get encouraged to surrender your life to Jesus in a way that will change your life in a way that, well, it's beyond any human understanding. It gives me goosebumps just to think about my personal experience and the ones that I've seen in others. It is the best way to live because the creator of everything says it is, and he should know. So until next time, if you want to contact me, please email me. I'm praying joy and peace and assurance for everyone. God bless.